Hi, this is Brian. Welcome back to our second episode for Utah and Rocky Mountain Railroad, the Spokane Division operations. We will be continuing in this episode. If you remember in the last one, we had sorted all our cars that had come in on 2 freight trains into our classification yard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these cars and sort them out over into the various destinations. And you might be wondering, how do we know where these cars are coming from? Well, if you do a Control N, what you'll see is that each of these cars has been tagged, and they are tagged with their destination and the business that they're headed to. So that way we have the information we need to switch these cars out in the local trains that we create, and for the ones going to different destinations, as soon as the tracks that are available for that destination are filled up, then it's time to schedule a train and ship it out so that we keep the yard available for future freight arrivals. So you'll notice, for example, that Coeur d'Alene has 2 tracks. So as soon as these 2 tracks are filled with freight cars, it will be time to schedule a train to have it remove those cars out of the yard. Moscow has 2, and Riggins at the bottom end of our layout also has 2 tracks. This middle track is our local, so as soon as we have this filled up with enough cars, we will schedule a local to deliver and pick up freight cars. And that will include also our forestry industries down the main line. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to use our switcher. Tyler is going to be helping us. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be going over into this direction, and we're going to start with our classification track number 1. So with that said, let's get it going. Tags so we can see where things are going. A lot of Spokane cars, so a lot of local. They're all local, so we're gonna go up to the center track. They're gonna be basically placed on this track here where we're assembling our local train. When we're ready to actually run that train, we'll organize the cars further to facilitate delivery to the industries. One of the things that I did after the first episode, I noticed we had some clearance issues between the tracks. So I've gone in and have tried to address those issues. I think I need to move that sign, so I'll do that after this session. I will release an update to the Module 1 layout, so keep your eyes out on the DLS. I've also made some fixes to track work down further in the line based off of things that I saw when creating the train ride episodes. So look forward to that. Those will be coming probably after I finish the train rides episodes when we get down to McCall. I'll make sure all those fixes that I find on the way down are in Module 1, and then I'll release it so that it'll be a comprehensive update. And these cars are coming in here. So I'm going to try to get them to stop right about there. So we have clearance. SP. Spokane, SP. See if I can get it all Spokane. Brakes. Now we're going to get the next set. Now on this string, come down here. If you remember when we were putting these in, you'll notice that we have a car that is butted up against the bumper. Well, we basically have broken that coupler. So what we're going to do for this particular car, we're going to make sure the brakes are applied. And we're going to uncouple it because this car is going to go into the car repair to have that coupler fixed. Okay, so now let's close these up and see what we're dealing with here. So we have some locals back here. Now we have some cars going into Coeur d'Alene. There we go. So this string, we start out with some local cars, and then we have Coeur d'Alene. So we're gonna come over here, and we're gonna join these cars here. You'll notice that we don't have that much room left. So I think what we're gonna do, I'm gonna put these into an overflow. So they're actually gonna come back up here. And if you remember over here, we had this track between Spokane and Portland. Well, Spokane is our local, so we're gonna put these extra cars over on this track. Okay, so this dairy car is going to Coeur d'Alene, so that's the last of the Spokane. And the rest of this string is all going to Coeur d'Alene. Switch already set for us, so we'll put them right on that track. see we have got a lot of space still on this track, so we'll continue to use it for quarterly. This is the next group. Okay, now this string, if you remember, down here, we also have a car that is butted up against the bumper. So these two cars are going to need to be taken over to the car repair shop, which is right here. And so we'll do that after we've sorted out our cars. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to apply the brakes. And then we're going to go ahead and move these cars out. so we'll take a look at the train here. These are all going to Coeur d'Alene. I see a problem here. This is also going to Coeur d'Alene cold storage. We'll get that fixed shortly. It's Coeur d'Alene, Coeur d'Alene, Coeur d'Alene. And then we have some Townsend, so I'll show you how to handle those. This is also going to Townsend, to the brickyard that's down there. Okay, so let me show you real quick how we can fix this. One of the nice things about running in Trainz 2022 in Platinum is that we can jump into Surveyor and fix problems, either on the layout or with cars, as we're looking here. So I'm going to jump into Surveyor real quick, and we're going to go in, and this is going to cold storage. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to copy the name, and then I'm going to come over here and we're going to fix that. So that car is now tagged correctly. And this one here is going to the brickyard in Townsend. So we're going to grab this, and we're going to come in here and we're going to paste it. And there we go. So we now have our train properly tagged for where these cars are headed. So now we'll jump back into driver, and we've got this. So we know that the back end here, these are all Coeur d'Alene cars. So we're going to continue loading this siding up, and when we run out of room, then we'll move to the second line and we'll start filling that track. So with that said, goes there, that goes there. So give it a moment. The brakeman goes ahead and gets the brake lines hooked up. And now we're going to push these cars back. One of the things that's useful, turn on the track profile, I can see the end of the track. So this is the last car. Go ahead and stop. And now we're going to come down here and see how good we did. So there we go. We got a little bit of space. We don't want to get too close to the bumpers because then we have to put cars in the car repair. So now I'm going to put the brakes on. And we're going to cut the cars right here. here, and you might be wondering why I hover over the junction. That little yellow lock that is above, when the last car passes over and that lock disappears, I can actually change the junction. So that's why I'm hovering over it, so I can know when to stop the train. And at this point, we don't need the profile on, so I'm going to turn that off. And we're going to open up this switch here, and this is where we are going to be parking the Coeur d'Alene cars. This is our last Coeur d'Alene car, so we're going to stop when it gets to about here. Okay, so now our last cars are all headed to Tenson. And you'll notice we have a freight arriving. So we'll have some more work to do. Okay, now for the Tenson cars, this poses an issue because you'll notice that we have Coeur d'Alene, we have Moscow, and we have Riggins. Well, Tenson's not listed there. But what we're going to do is put it on the train going to the destination that is closest to Tenson. And in this particular case, that would be Moscow. So we're going to put these cars on the Moscow track. stop right about there. Pick up the next load. Our last string of cars. These cars here, we stopped them in time, so we don't have any broken cars here. So that said, this train, we have some more cars going to the brickyard, and so that'll be all these. These are all going down to Tencent. Tencent. Wow, lots of cars going down to the brickyard. And then we have a new location on the way. There's a freight house down there, so that car is going further down the line. And then we've got another car for Tencent. And with that said, let's go ahead and get these put in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add to the stack that we're putting on the Moscow track. Give the brakeman a moment to fix this, and then we're going to push back. So we're going to put the brakes. On the brakes, and we got that uncoupled. So now we're going to pull forward. And I think we may have hit the bumper back there. So before this string can be towed anywhere, or we'll have to address that broken coupler back there. But we will deal with that when we get to it. Okay, so we have this car has to go to Tenson, and then there's a car in front of it that's going to Onaway, and then there's another Tenson car. So Moscow 1 is all loaded, so we're going to go to 2, and that's where those two cars are going to basically end up. Next car is to Onaway. Now for Onaway, since we don't have a actual track for Onaway, the closest destination to Onaway is Riggins. So we're going to put this car on that track. Now our last car is back to Tenson. So it's going to go on the Moscow 2 track. So there's Moscow 2. Let's flip these around. Brakemen do their job and push this back. that just about does it for this video. In our next episode, we will deal with getting these two cars moved over to the car repair barn, and we will break down this Northern Pacific freight that has arrived. We work closely with Northern Pacific. They have trackage rights on the Utah and Rocky Mountain. So you'll see lots of Northern Pacific trains. So we'll be servicing their diesels and breaking down the train into the classification yards in our next episode. So we'll see you then.